Welcome to this week's FWA review. I'm here with Paul McCarthy, the Executive Secretary of the FWA. And we start on a sombre note, Paul. Not only this morning we've discovered the loss of Gordon Banks, aged 81, World Cup winning goalkeeper for England, a legend of the game, our Footballer of the Year in 1972, but we're also fresh in the memory our beloved Vikki, who was Vice Chair of the FWA, passed away last week, and on the same day Clive, another great football writer, great friend of ours. So it's been a terrible week, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been fairly horrific, quite frankly. Gordon Banks, the news this morning, he was with us just over a year ago at Savoy, and he was paying tribute to Pele, his old friend.
Yeah.
Fantastic save, we will remember, from the 1970 World Cup. And he was just incredibly good company, wasn't he? I think the speech that he gave, it was great. It brought the house down. It looked like a well-practiced speech.
I think you've probably said that line a few times.
Probably thrown that line in a few times, but there's a tribute running on our website now.
Yeah, so you can go and see that.
Difficult for me to judge. Didn't see Gordon Banks. I don't remember seeing him live. I possibly did. But you've seen the clips on the television. You've seen his performances for England, and most notably, I guess, at club level for Stoke. And he will rank as one of the all-time great goalkeepers.
Yeah.
Not just English, not just British, but all-time great goalkeepers. Yeah. That save in 1970 in Mexico for Pele is just one of those iconic moments that everybody who knows about football and cares about football, loves football, knows that moment. With a cross from Jorginho, Pele's up, he's unmarked, he gets the header in, it's bouncing into the top corner, does everything right, Pele, nice to see. And then Banks suddenly defying logic, the agility to get across the goal and to tip it up and over the bar. It was just incredible.
And as Pele said, he thought it was a goal, didn't he?
He thought he was celebrating. Yeah. You could see he had just about started to celebrate.
And as Banksy says in his piece, I think it's probably more. Some people say, "Why didn't you catch it?"
Why didn't you catch it? Yeah, exactly.
So but a true great, and he'll be honoured in days to come. And then, of course, closer to home, perhaps for us, Vikki Orvice was a dear friend. She had a terrible battle, but incredibly courageous, and she carried on working.
Yeah, a decade-long battle against cancer, and just when you thought that you thought this is so tough, and you'd think any normal person would have taken time off. She didn't. She was in and out of hospital, but she was always working. I think the tributes to her over the last week, not just from our profession, but from sport in general, from football, athletics, minutes applause, I think was
right. The indoor
championships, the weekend just gone. Paula Radcliffe, just getting his hill.
Seb
Coe. I thought it was an incredibly moving tribute that Seb Coe paid. But it just showed the high regard in which Vikki was held. She was the vice chair, and for a long time was the only woman on the national committee. Not the case now, thankfully, and she was a driving force behind recruiting more women, not just to join the FWA, but to forge a path in the industry, to aspire to absolutely the highest level that you can get to. And listen, she was at that level for a long time. I think she started at the Sun in 1995.
Well, I remember her before that.
She was at the Mail. And she was just a lovely person.
Yeah.
She was so warm-hearted. She gave so many people so much time. It's a sad loss. And the FWA is poorer for her loss.
And we will be putting a more fuller tribute to Vikki out in the next week or two, and talking to some of her family.
Well, I think it's indicative of the esteem and love in which she was held, is that people are just falling over themselves to be involved in that tribute.
And of course, on the same day, another great friend of ours, Clive, Chalky as he was affectionately known, lovely man, always smiling, great professional, deputy editor of the Times at one stage, sports editor. And again, a losing battle with cancer, and the same day.
Yeah, it was just when the loss of Vikki was registering with us, and then late in the afternoon we got the message that Clive had passed away again after a long battle with cancer, as you say, Gerry. He was such a lovely guy. I mean, he must have been a nightmare for subs, because I don't think he ever fired on time. I've never seen him less than frantic in the press box, working against the deadline. But great company in a press box, great company on a trip, live life to the full, and leaves behind a lot of friends. And a very, very good writer. He crafted every word. We spoke about Hugh McCarthy a couple of weeks ago, passing away as well. But these are people who cared about every word that they wrote, and Clive was no different. Perhaps not in Hugh's living, but certainly in the way that he cared for his profession, and he cared for his craft.
Well, we'll post details. I think if you look out for the FWA's social media and go to footballwriters.co.uk, you'll see details of funeral for both of those, and obviously tributes to Gordon Banks as well. Back to more immediate matters. This week it's been another dramatic week of football. We've got the Champions League, but probably before that we've got to think about Chelsea's situation, because that 6-0 beating at City was brutal, and
off the back of a 4-0 defeat by Bournemouth.
So Maurizio Sarri's future is very much...
and every one of the papers, I think, has got really big hit spreads on them. Darren Lewis in the Daily Mirror, Sarri Ball's saviour, looks more like a pound shop Pep. This is a time when you're working as a reporter, as a journalist, across every strand of the media. You're working with contacts at Chelsea, you're phoning up, you're talking to as many people associated with the club, inside and outside of the club, to find out, to take the mood, what the temperature is at the training ground at Cobham. We know that Roman Abramovich is something of an absentee owner now, but Marina Granovskaya, who is his right-hand person, is on the ground. She was the one who made the appointment of Sarri. There is a feeling across a lot of the papers that he will be given a little bit more time, and there is a call by and large in the media, I think, to give him more time. He's 7 months in the job. Remember, he didn't take over until the middle of July. Because of the ongoing dispute with Antonio Conte. So the bottom line is he hasn't had a huge amount of time to establish himself. And the question that a lot of people are asking is, has he actually got the players to implement the kind of football that he played at Napoli, which was so entertaining?
He's only really brought in Higuain, isn't he? That's the one he's brought in.
And Jorginho,
of course, in last summer.
Two people who he knows. But two people. Higuain's 31 years old. Jorginho started off well, but doesn't seem to have come to terms.
Sort of got found out a little bit.
A little bit. When they put Dele Alli on him at Spurs, and when Aaron Ramsey kind of sat on him, he looked ineffective, and Chelsea equally look ineffective. Huge amount of questions about Maurizio Sarri now. I think he was the first Chelsea manager that they brought in that hasn't actually won anything. If you think about it, he came to the game very late. He was
finance, wasn't he?
And he's come in. He obviously did a fantastic job at Napoli and made them, I have to say, one of the most attractive sides in Europe to watch. But he hasn't got a track record of putting trophies on the table, which is what previous managers have always had at Chelsea. So there's pressure on him there. You keep hearing about, and Darren says it in his piece, and there's a couple of other pieces in the paper where players, or the word is that players feel they're being overloaded with tactics. It's a very, very fine line. I think Dave Kidd here in The Sun says it's now, despite the fact that he hasn't got a visa, Roman Abramovich, to come into the country, it's a lot of big questions are going to be asked of the Chelsea owner now. Roman's ruined this, Dave Kidd's column in The Sun. And he says, well, we'll see actually whether this is just going to be another knee-jerk by Chelsea, whether they will just draw a line, having lost 6-0 to City, 4-0 at Bournemouth. They'll draw a line up very early under the Sarri era. I think it will depend a huge amount as to who they've got lined up, because you don't see a natural successor. You go through who's out of work now. Zinedine Zidane doesn't really seem a good fit at Chelsea to me. Perhaps they'll look at one of these German or Portuguese Funde kids who are coming through in a managerial through the managerial sort of treadmill, if you like.
There's obviously Frank Lampard's doing pretty well at Derby, and John Terry's gone into country, but
pretty well.
Soon, isn't it, for such a big job?
Very incredibly soon for somebody like Frank Lampard. I think He's only been in the Derby job since the summer, so I think it would be asking far too much if Frank had too much pressure on somebody so inexperienced. Listen, I think Frank's going to be an incredibly capable manager, but at the moment, no, I think it would be ludicrous. Talking about Champions League, there are a lot of previews of Champions League matches, and I think one of the strange things is these days it actually seems to be a lot easier to get high-profile interviews with players who play abroad.
Yeah,
English,
bizarrely.
Yes. Yeah, it's case in point here. A lot of the papers, Matt Barlow here in the Mail, I've got interviews with Jadon Sancho, who's playing fantastically out of his skin.
Real success story
at Dortmund.
Ollie Kay's done it in the Times.
Yeah,
a few others.
So people have obviously Dortmund have recognised that there's going to be a huge clamour for Sancho coming back to England, and they've facilitated a series of interviews, or a group interview with Sancho, and he comes across absolutely brilliantly. Yeah. And so many big clubs on the continent, your Bayern Munich's, your Real Madrid's, certainly Barcelona, Dortmund as well, PSG, come on to that in a moment, recognise the overriding and reach of the British media, social media, online. It's a huge thing for them.
It's great exposure, isn't it?
It's fantastic exposure to be able to go in and, you look at it's a spread in the Mail, and I would say that's probably 1,300 words what Matt Barlow's got in an interview, but also it'll go online in the Mail, and the Mail is the biggest online newspaper website in the world, and the exposure that a young talent like Jadon Sancho will get, but also the exposure that Borussia Dortmund will get around the world. It's hugely positive, and it's a really nice piece, but it is symptomatic of the awareness of clubs now, and certainly clubs outside of the Premier League, that they want the exposure in the British media.
And do you think some of the British clubs the English clubs perhaps could
absolutely
learn a lesson from
100%. I think they could learn lessons from people like clubs like AS Roma have got their social media down to a fine art. It's smart, it's funny, it's in English.
It's run out of the States, that site.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's run out of America. Yeah.
So it's very clever, and it's very smart, and it's very shrewd. And there are certain clubs in the Premier League who have caught onto that and realised that opening the doors helps them so much more than closing the doors.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we at the FWA have been, we've always said, if you open the front door, you get positivity. If you close the front door, people are still going to go around the back.
And you never know what we might knock over the bins.
Exactly.
Not literally.
No. But and again, in the Daily Telegraph today, Jason Burt's got an interview with Gianluigi Buffon, 41 years old, at PSG.
One of the greats.
We're talking about great goalkeepers in Gordon Banks. Buffon, you would say, is right up there. And again, it's a really big interview. It's a very positive interview. It's a lovely portrait that they've got of Buffon, and it's just smart thinking on PSG's part. To be fair, Jason has struck up a really good relationship with PSG. He's been over there a couple of times. I think he's done Cavani. I think he did that sort of semi piece with Neymar. But PSG are smart. They realise that somebody like the Telegraph will give them fantastic exposure, and it's great.
And English language exposure, which is important.
Exactly, hugely. And the bottom line is, you're going into Champions League. I wonder how many foreign journalists have come over to England to say Manchester United or Liverpool and got the same response. I don't know if that's the case. Although you look at a couple of the Spanish journalists come over, or English journalists working in Spain, thinking of Sid Lowe, thinking of Pete Jensen, people like that, who come over to England and get good access with Spanish players, and it obviously helps that they speak fluent Spanish. So, but it's a really interesting development that foreign clubs are seeing the British media as a passport to wider recognition, whereas English clubs don't always see it exactly the same way.
And of course, the other point is in Champions League football, UEFA enforce much better press access and facilities.
Although this is, I don't think this has come through.
But even so, covering the Champions League or Europa League game, you're guaranteed access to players before and afterwards.
Yeah.
It's much more relaxed, but well controlled.
Yeah.
The Premier League are less inclined to guarantee that access.
Listen, it's not all Premier League clubs. No. This is not a blanket derision of Premier League clubs, because there's a lot of clubs who recognise the value of an interview like this that Jason's done with Buffon, but more should.
Good. So big week for Manchester United and Tottenham in the Champions League, and then next week Liverpool and Manchester City, and then Chelsea and Arsenal in the Europa League. So big week in Europe. Is it a good time for English clubs at the moment?
It feels like it.
You sort of think of the two competitions, we should at least have a finalist or two, possibly a winner in the Europa League.
It feels like it. I mean, we're talking about PSG here with Buffon. You know, when the draw was made back in, I think December the 17th, early December, sometime where it looked like, well, whoever out of all the big clubs in the knockout stages got Manchester United would have been rubbing their hands. Now you don't see it like that.
And without Cavani and Neymar for the first leg, it's a different story, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Manchester United now are on an absolute... They're riding a wave, not just of enthusiasm, not just of confidence, but of belief. They look like they believe in themselves. They look like they don't feel as if they can lose a game at the moment. And it's a wonderful cycle to get into. I mean, you see it from the other hand. Sometimes you don't know where the next goal or points coming from. With Manchester United, everything that they try has come off and has been successful for them. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has done a fantastic job in creating that kind of mood.
And it's filtered down to the fans as well.
It has filtered down to the fans.
Feel-good effect.
Absolutely.
Factor.
But 2 legs against PSG
that'd be
is a real test. Yeah. I would say Manchester United are favourites, given that Neymar isn't going to be playing, or Cavani. Certainly in the first leg, Neymar I think is out for the return leg as well. But I think there's been stories over the weekend and I think on Monday in a couple of the papers that basically it's a shoo-in for Solskjaer, whether it's announced now or whether it's announced at the end of the season. I wouldn't be in such a rush. Why they don't have to be in a rush. They don't have to make an appointment until the summer, certainly, or a full-time appointment until the summer. Let's see. If I were the Glazers and I was Ed Woodward, I'd be seeing how you go against PSG in the Champions League. Before, listen, if you beat them comfortably and over 2 legs, then why wouldn't you give it to Solskjaer? But at the moment, I think these are 2 big games for the future of Manchester United.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for that, Paul.
Pleasure.
And as we said, keep coming back to the FWA social media, the footballwriters.co.uk website, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube, Facebook as well. You'll see all of our posts, updates on what's going on at the moment. And come back soon for the next version of FWA Review.